Good day, folks. I see that we're at the top of the hour, and I notice that the recording is now on. My name is Wendy Craiglin-Gauthier, and I am one of the members of the Canadian Evaluation Society's Professional Learning Committee, and I'm also a member of the PEI chapter, where I hold the PD chair role. And it is my honor to welcome you all to this webinar on starting your independent consulting journey. But first of all, I would like to acknowledge that the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we are meeting today in this virtual platform, we also need to acknowledge the importance of the physical lands, which we all call home. And we do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to also improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. And from coast to coast to coast, we do acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territories of all of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that do call this land home. Personally, I am honored to live, work, and play as an uninvited guest on Eptawik, which is a place that's also known by its settler name of Prince Edward Island. And here I am thankful for the opportunities that I've been gifted with to support and really action truth and reconciliation, especially in terms of self-governance and sovereignty over education that does reflect the importance of Indigenous cultures, language, and ceremony. Now, I do invite you to put your land acknowledgements into the chat if you so wish, and I'm going to turn over our session to our facilitator and to our panelists.
Thanks, Wendy. So I am actually moderating this session, Employee to Entrepreneurs, Starting Your Independent Consulting Journey. So the webinar is, as Wendy said, it's hosted by CS's National Professional Learning Committee, and it's presented by the Independent Consulting Community of Interest, or ICCI. So I'm Vanessa Anastasopoulos. I am an independent consultant based out of Montreal. I'm the chair of the ICCI, as well as a longtime CES volunteer. And as I said, I'm going to be moderating today's webinar, which is going to be led by Dr. Gail Villens-Barrington, with experiential learnings shared by our panelists, Stephen Kester, Hema Viaz, and Morgan Braganza. Please note that the webinar is being recorded so that CS members can access it in the future. And feel free to activate the closed captioning function if you prefer to follow the discussion in writing. We're going to be kicking off this session with a brief overview of the ICCI because it's relatively new and a lot of the CS members just aren't familiar with it yet. So then we're going to move on to our Employee to Entrepreneur panel discussion, which will be followed by a Q&A period that I'm going to moderate. Please feel free at any time to put your questions in the chat. So if you think of something during the panel discussion, don't forget it. So you don't forget it, put it in. We'll only get to answering your questions during the discussion period, but I'll keep an eye and make sure that we get back to them time permitting. And please also note that this webinar is going to be in English, but questions and comments can absolutely be posed in French, and I will translate as needed. So the ICCI was founded just over a year ago in conjunction with CES's Communities of Interest pilot project. We provide mutual support and foster community for independent evaluation consultants, as well as for what I like to call consulting curious evaluators. All CS members can join ICCI for free, and we are a completely volunteer-run group. We currently offer independent consulting related workshops, webinars, and networking events at least every 3 months, but more frequently when we have the capacity to do so. So today's webinar is an example of how we partner with CES to deliver events relevant to its members. And you can find recordings of past ICCI events on the ICCI YouTube channel. All of this info that I'm giving you, you'll see on the slide links to it, but I'm also going to put those links in the chat once I'm done speaking. So thanks to CES's support, we also have access to an online discussion forum where CES members can ask and answer each other's questions about independent consulting, as well as receive email notifications when there are new discussions posted. To sign up for the discussion forum, just log into the CES website and click on Communities in the Members Area tab. So currently, there are 96 ICCI members, 1/3 of whom are consulting curious. So they haven't worked or they're not working yet as consultants. And the other 2/3 of our ICCI members are already independent consultants, either as their primary full-time role or part-time in conjunction with being employed within an organization. So if you'd like to become a CES member, you're already a CES member, probably, an ICCI member, the easiest way to find our registration form is probably to visit the ICCI website, which is at eval-ICCI.ca. I mentioned that the ICCI is volunteer run. Our steering committee is currently comprised of myself, the chair, Gail, the past chair, as well as our fabulous member representatives, Demi Picadu, Dawn Murray, Dorothy Agbetiafa, and Holly Zapfred. We also have been privileged to have sponsors whose donations have paid for all of the ICCI tech to date that keeps us functioning, like having an ICCI website and Google Drive and email address. But the more volunteers we have, the more our events and other types of support that we offer can be done. So I'm encouraging everybody everybody who's interested in independent consulting to join the ICCI and to consider joining our steering committee, because as it happens, our AGM is taking place on June 11th from 12 to 1 Eastern time. And Carolyn Hosler, who, if you don't know her, she's a very talented independent consultant who sat on the ICCI steering committee last year, is going to be hosting the election of the new steering committee members. So you can find actually information on how to join the steering committee is going to be distributed very soon through the ICCI email distribution list. So to get access to that, you just have to sign up to be a member. And another great reason to attend the AGM is that Carolyn will also be hosting an engaging networking event on June, like in conjunction with the June 11th session. So the focus of this networking event is going to be on how independent consultants can adapt to the generative AI era. And it's a networking event. So come prepared to share with your colleagues how you use AI in your evaluation practice, your use challenges, and your burning questions about AI for independent consultants. So with that, I'm now going to pass it over to Gail to kick off our main event of the day, which is our panel discussion.
Thanks, Vanessa, and hi, everybody. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. So we're talking today about the independent consulting journey. And I've certainly seen a few of those stops along the way, being a consultant for 35 years, starting out as a completely solo practitioner and moving up to an incorporated company where I had 20 employees and then downsizing again until I returned to where I am now, which is my office in my basement. And so it's been a wonderful journey. And I don't regret one thing that I learned along the way. So we're going to talk today about starting up, what gets you into it, and so on. We've got three wonderful speakers, and they're going to tell you about their own journey and the things that help to shape their consulting practice or their considerations considering going into consulting, the risks and benefits that they've thought about, the challenges and rewards, and so on. So I don't want to take any more time announcing what's going to happen. Let's just get into it. So our first question is about what led you to think about independent consulting as a career option in terms of both um, external factors in the environment in which you found yourself or still find yourself, and then also what sort of internal or personal factors have had an effect on your decision. And I'm going to start with Stephen.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Gail. Thanks, everybody. My name is Stephen Kester. I'm an independent consultant. I've been one for the last 7 years, and I've actually had 2 iterations of being an independent consultant. The first time was about 25 years ago, and it lasted for about 1.5 years. I had been on posting overseas in Sri Lanka for 5 years and was working for a non-governmental organization in international development at the time. And when I came back, I didn't really want to go back into the NGO world. So I had a few connections and a bit of a network that was still in Ottawa. My wife and I decided, do we move back to Ottawa? We moved somewhere else, but our networks were in Ottawa. So we stayed, we came back here, and I opened up, put out my banner and started consulting, and slowly got a number of clients and worked my way up. The amazing factor was after about 1.5 years, someone had told me that someone over at Foreign Affairs and International Development, now known as Global Affairs Canada, someone in the evaluation department was looking for consultants. So I sent them my CV and didn't hear from them. And, I was busy with other things. And that's how you are as an independent consultant, going from one to the other. And I got a call from the director of evaluation and said, I don't want to hire you as a consultant. I want to hire you as an employee. Now, I never thought about working for government, and he told me how great the ES classification was. And I said, what's an ES classification? And so, but I thought, well, why not? What kind of journey that can be done? And so for the next 16 years, I worked for Foreign Affairs and International Development in the evaluation section. It became Global Affairs Canada. My director left. He had made me deputy director. Then I became director, and I was the head of evaluation for Foreign Affairs and International Development for 7 years. And then I decided to retire. So I had the benefit of a pension. That's pretty good. And I had a network, and I quickly began consulting in international development again, and I've been doing so for the last 7 years. So
That's great. That's great. That happenstance that you're not expecting, that phone call. That's something I think as independent consultants, we always have to be open for, because we never know what's around the next corner, which is pretty exciting itself. I can see Morgan and Hema nodding. Anyway, Hema, let's hear from you in terms of internal and external factors.
Thanks, Gail, and thanks. It was good to hear about your experience, Stephen. I think I started my career actually in consulting with a boutique firm. I moved through government, nonprofit, and private sectors at various points in my career, so developed networks there too, and a lot of experiences. And I also ran for office and created a program training other women to run for office and train and prepare. So I was always involved and engaged in entrepreneurial experiences in some way or another. Certainly running your election campaign is a whole entrepreneurial experience unto itself. And I really enjoyed the adventure. I knew I could deal with the uncertainty and really, I'm very curiosity driven. So a lot of those factors came into play. So it was always in the back of my mind until point in my career a couple of years ago where I realized this was the time. I had the practicalities in place. I did an internal sort of audit of, do I have the finances, the networks, the sorts of things, the comfort, the lifestyle, and can I maintain it? And also, do I feel comfortable going out on my own now? So that was the perfect time to do it. And so a couple of years ago, I launched as an independent consultant. I also work in partnership on some projects, so have happily started to move forward.
That's great. Thank you so much, Hema. Now, Morgan, let's hear from you. I think that there are a lot of our listeners today who may be in the same boat that you are.
Great, thank you. And thanks for your story, Stephen and Hema, as well. So mine's a little bit unique in that I am not currently an independent evaluation consultant as my full-time role. I fall somewhere between part-time and curious, but I was a full-time independent consultant, and I would actually like to return to the role of doing full-time independent evaluation consulting. So a little bit about my journey was in 2009, I was hired by a not-for-profit counseling agency as an evaluator. So I was hired within their agency, within their evaluation department, and I conducted program evaluations as part of my job on their programs and services. And then later in 2009, I took my first evaluation project as an independent evaluation consultant. So I worked with another counseling agency to evaluate one of their clinical programs. They had put out a call for evaluations and I applied for the position. I got it. And then while completing that, I took a series of additional evaluation projects with other agencies, mostly through word of mouth, stemming from that one first contract. And so then in 2010, I loved it. I hung out my shingle, so to speak, ended up becoming a full-time independent evaluation consultant. I was motivated for a couple of reasons to do this. One, because evaluation is absolutely fun, completely life-giving and enjoyable. And two, because I wanted to help people in this capacity. So I'm in social work, trained in social work, but there are very few social workers who do evaluation and research. A lot of them are in the field, and that's great. So evaluation is a really big gap in this particular field. And so they needed somebody who understood research and evaluation and had an evaluative mindset and some skills. So I appreciated contributing in that way. So that's why I loved it. Since 2009, I've mostly worked with not-for-profits across Southwestern Ontario. So I've worked, for instance, with the Canadian Mental Health Association, the Suicide Prevention Network, counseling agencies, community health centers, and then sometimes universities, evaluating their programming. And so I've hired staff, I've worked with students. And then in 2012, I started a PhD in social work. And I continued at the same time to do independent evaluation consulting while I was doing my PhD, albeit a much reduced workload, and completed the PhD in 2020. But in 2019, I got offered a tenure track teaching position in social work. And that was really hard to turn down at the time. So I took the job, but I did continue to do independent evaluation consulting really actively until about 2021. Which was kind of the end of my second full-time teaching year. And so I've tried to continue to work as an evaluation consultant, but it's hard. And so the workload is really hard. I found that I couldn't do it because the workload in academia is a lot of teaching, a lot of committee work, not a lot of time to do other things. And so that's part of the reason that I'll talk about later of why I would like to return to move away from academia and return to independent consulting because it's wonderful and fun.
Well, thanks so much, Morgan. And there was one point you made that I think we ought to stress, and that's about spin-offs and how, you take one project and it leads to 4 or 5. And that was something that I always loved about consulting, is because you never knew where you were going to end up. One thing led to another, which could be quite removed from where you had been originally, but was such a learning journey. It was really hard to resist. So that's great. Well, thank you very much. I wonder if you could just crystallize, though, for me, what was the key, biggest motivating factor? Like, if it was one thing that made you make that decision, what was it? And we'll start with Hema.
Thanks. That's a really good question. For me, I think it was timing. It was when I looked, I think as evaluators, if I could take a step back, we're really great. We tend to be good entrepreneurs, I think, because we're very results based. I know I have my own internal logic model. I knew where I was in my career. I knew where I wanted to go. As I said, it was always in the back of my mind, and that this was the time to start moving towards my own independent consulting, as it had been a long time goal.
Okay, great, thank you. So Morgan, what is the crystallizing thing like? What's tipping you over the edge?
Yeah, so I think it does help that I originally was an independent evaluation consultant because I know what it was to do that job. So I know what my original motivators were. So as I mentioned, evaluation, I just think is fun. I think it's life-giving. I think it's incredibly valuable and just really life-giving as a career. And I enjoyed helping people in that capacity. So I enjoyed helping not-for-profits who didn't have evaluation experience, but wanted to do evaluations. They just didn't have the capacity to do it themselves. And I liked doing that. And there's a couple other things too. It might sound strange, but I also prefer working with multiple organizations for short periods of time, doing multiple different things. I like variety. I like working on different projects at the same time. I like meeting lots and lots of different people and working with them for, a season, right? A little bit of period of time. So I liked doing that. I also maybe this is okay to say, is liked being free from organizational politics as well, right? So I was kind of I was with organizations and removed from them at the same time. And I really, really enjoyed that. So that's one of my motivators to return, is to go back to doing those things. So, academia is not what I expected that it would be, where, you have this assurance that you'll have the freedom to work on the things that you want to work on. That's not actually, at least most people's realities, right? You get doing other things, committee work, teaching, and these kinds of things. And so I missed pursuing working with other people on their interests. I missed the variety. I missed meeting all kinds of different people. So, there's these two pieces of it. The landscape in academia is changing rapidly and is not what I expected. And I missed the variety and the actual work of doing evaluations from the field, which is why I would like to go back to doing that. So I have a couple of motivators happening at the same time.
Yeah, I've always said evaluators have a short attention span. And so that's why, we like variety, right? We don't get bored. And certainly organizational politics have got to be a big one. I don't know, Stephen, was that at all a motivator, or you were retiring?
Totally. It's the one key word for me was independence. Independence to get away from the bureaucracy, all the organizational happenings going on, and there was a lot of changes when I decided to retire from global affairs. There were a lot of changes. CETA had just Canadian International Development Agency had just amalgamated with the Foreign Affairs and International Development Organization and became Global Affairs. So it took 2.5 years, 3 years to amalgamate the evaluation groups. CETA was much larger than my group, so it was a little bit difficulty in doing that transition. And then they hired a foreign service officer as head of evaluation for global affairs, who I was showing the way of how to do evaluations. So so I felt it was time to move, and to become my independent. I wanted to go back into international development as well. I love strategic level evaluations where it can have effect on organizations to look at, look at their structures and their policies and their missions and whatnot, and make sure that their form follows, their structure is following their function, right? So they make sure that their structures is organized around their mission and their functions. And so it's really that independence and moving from different organizations back, so as evaluators, we get a lot of information that's not given to heads of organizations that we can then can advise and support and help them develop and change their organizations for the better. So that's where I really enjoy doing it, and moving from one to the other. That's a joy. But Morgan, I share that same thing. When I first went into independent evaluations and independent consulting, I miss that social aspects of it. So I try to find projects now that have teams attached to it. So I get to work with other members of my team to do an evaluation of an organization, and because it's a lonely life out there sometimes, and sometimes there are moments when you don't get work that you might want to have. So it's that can be frustrating as well. So I think that's the next question, though.
It is. You're leading us right into it, because we need to talk about risks, because it's so attractive. I mean, everything that everybody has said, you want to, drop everything tomorrow and become an independent consultant, but it is a risky choice. I don't think any of us can deny that fact. And so, what risks did you anticipate? And Morgan, we're going to start with you. What risks did you anticipate? And then did they materialize, or have they so far?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm kind of drawing back on past experience and pulling it into the present. So I would agree. There's definitely, at least in my experience anyway, taking the kinds of contracts that I took, there was some precarity. So not only in whether contracts were available, but sometimes in what you got paid for them, because I often worked with not-for-profits. And so sometimes what they had available to pay me was not necessarily on par with what other consultants were being paid. So there is a kind of precarity waiting for contracts or looking for contracts or having to find contracts. Now, I had lots of stuff come through word of mouth as well. So I didn't actually find that to be as risky as what I expected it to be at the time. But there is still a risk. There's also a financial risk, I would say, for I think some evaluation consultants, in that I had to work my own benefits and vacation and pension into my fees. I somehow had to figure that out, rather than just being, guaranteed these things, or they're worked into your pay as I have now. So my hours, the type of work that I was doing, my contracts were not as predictable as, say, my current teaching position. So I'm aware that if I return, I'm going back to that kind of precarity. Now, with that said, none of my concerns have materialized yet. I just am aware of them from my past. And I would say that although there are risks, for me, the benefits of returning, and we'll talk about this later, like the variety and all the things, the passion for the work, that far outweighs the risks for me. So there are risks, certainly, but I think you have to kind of weigh them.
Yeah, and if I could just put a plug in for the book I wrote in 2012 about, being an independent evaluator or applied researcher. The whole first section is about, do I have what it takes? Because it's a kind of a personality thing too. I mean, yes, there are definitely financial risks, but it's also, can I live in uncertainty? Can I live without a whole lot of people around me, or do I really need that water cooler kind of experience? How does my family feel about this? They have to be on side, or it's just simply not worth it. And so personal considerations like those, I think, have to be taken into account as well. But Hema, let's hear from you. What about risks for you?
Absolutely. I would reiterate what Morgan and Gail, what you just said too, about knowing who you are and really being very honest with yourself about what are your priorities. What does it take, financially, emotionally, from a resilience perspective, what do you need to be successful? Because also, and especially when you're starting out, but at every point in your career, especially independent consulting, you want that sense of confidence. You want that sense of self-confidence. And what do you need to do that? So when I looked at myself, I wanted a certain financial cushion, and that really came to bear because immediately on my own timeline, when I started independent consulting, a very close family member fell very ill. So a significant part of my time, most of my time actually went to care for a family member. And I was so relieved to be able to do that. I was also very aware, because I'm a very practical person, that time I was really relieved that I had the financial cushion and that I had the emotional support from my friends, from my networks to be able to do that. Because that time didn't have an employer to cover that. I didn't have the benefits to cover that. To great relief, my close family member is doing very well and has recovered well. And also, I was able to use that financial cushion and also reach out to my networks. And when the time was right, the consulting work did come, focused mostly on community development and healthcare. And so I'm able to move forward in my consulting. But I know that emotionally and my network during COVID, our close neighbors actually created a network, and a couple of them do work from home always as independent consultants. So it was great. I could get advice from them. We can relate to each other about different things. We can give practical tips about benefits packages and things like that as well. As I said, financially, I did an analysis. I also did analysis of my own sense of risk. How do I feel right now about doing it? How will I feel in front of clients? How do I have people to bounce things off of so I can consistently learn? And do I have, you need that freedom and that space to be able to explore and to absorb that risk and keep going. So I felt that I was in the right space, and I still feel that way. So yeah, that's my tale.
Great. That's part of the excitement, of course, is feeling that you're in the right place at the right time.
Absolutely. And oh, sorry. And that there's a practical as well as an emotional component to that.
Yeah, for sure. So Stephen, your story sounds pretty ideal, but there must have been some risks.
Oh, totally. And I really appreciate Morgan's and Emma's voices there, because they're exactly what I was concerned about. When I came back from Sri Lanka, I was facing, there's financial difficulties. I had a young family. We had to support them. They were there for 5 years. And they were also in culture shock coming back. So part of the benefit was that I was around for when they came home from school, when they went to school. I started volunteering in the library at their elementary school, which was, I think I was the only male there. And it's kind of odd, but it was fantastic. But it was also the financial uncertainty, and the idea of you're selling yourself, you're opening up a business, I had to struggle with that a little bit, like, what do I really have to sell? I mean, am I worth this amount of money that I'm charging on a daily rate? And am I giving them value for money? And that always was a difficult question for me. I'm an introvert at best of times, but I can be extrovert. I mean, I get my energy from being introverted. So, but I love being around people, and so there's this part of a social isolation as well, because you're on your own. You're not with an organization. You're not building something. You're just in a sense, making money, right? Even though that you're putting effort into to create better things for things in society, hopefully. I worked with a lot of nonprofits at that beginning time. I now work with a lot of international organizations, and they're not, the UN agencies and development banks and some other organizations. So it's really the uncertainty. That's what comes back to it. And when there's a lapse, I mean, I never had to really work to get another consulting job for the first few years out of government. But then COVID hit, and that really kind of stopped a lot of things that were from happening. Even though I had a lot of work at the beginning of COVID and through COVID, coming out of COVID, maybe work hasn't been as busy as I would have liked. And so then you begin questioning as well, am I getting too old? Or are they saying, is there ageism here? I mean, they want younger evaluators, or so part of it is a self-doubt that might creep into you if you're not getting the work that you were expecting along the way. So it's a journey, and you have to work through it, and you have to have good support systems to work through it, and keep that communication open.
Right. Some very good points there, for sure. So then let's think about our audience and maybe some key suggestions and strategies that you might have for evaluators who are just starting out or wondering if they should take the plunge. And Stephen, I'm going to start with you just to get back to the beginning of our cycle.
Sure. So my advice is, you have, whatever you've done in the past, you have a network. Use full advantage of that network. That's what's made me successful so far, and getting jobs along the way is, and constantly don't be afraid to go back to them and say, that you're out there, and you might not. If you knock on enough doors, they may not be ready for you now, but they might be ready for you in 2, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months down the line. So you need to be visible to people. So how do you make yourself visible to others? You volunteer your services to different things. Once I retired, I became a board member of CES National Capital chapter, and then moved on to become the treasurer of national at CES, and so I had a lot of volunteer experience there. Another thing is to align yourself with others. You have, and this is part of your network building. So if I got a job because one of my friends knew a friend. I knew him a little bit, but he was looking for someone to do a big job with Netherlands, the Dutch Foreign Ministry, and I was available, and we went together. And now we're best friends. So it's so there's really advantages. So you just have to be out there and make yourself aware of things. I've worked with a lot of one consulting firm in particular, but I've worked with consulting firms, and they are an avenue for you to get jobs either as a part of an evaluation team or a team leader. So a lot of opportunities in international development are, you really need an organization behind you, and they request that legally, as well as putting together a team, with national consultants, as well as sector-specific consultants. So I've aligned myself with a number of consulting firms, which I had contact with as an evaluator in the government before. Make presentations, publish your work, become visible, and develop core clients, and remind them that you're still here. So every once in a while, my first client was Asian Development Bank, and I keep going back to them and saying, "Hey, I'm here, if you need help." So it's and you get different contracts. So I've had consistent contracts with certain organizations over the years that keep coming back. There might be a lapse in time, but then you keep going back and things and to remind them that you're still there. Finally, the use of social media is always important. So that's a way to advertise yourself. Those are my hints.
Yeah,
Tips.
that's great. I think some of us are definitely introverts, and we need to develop a thick skin, because you are selling yourself in a way. You have to be what they want. And so I think that takes a strength of character, because you can know that you may personally disagree with some of the things that are being said. And I mean, you have to be authentic and so on, but you don't have to share everything about yourself when you're working with a client. So that's one thing for sure. And some of it, as I said before, is happenstance. Like, I know a consultant who wasn't even present when a friend of his was having lunch with somebody else who needed an evaluator, and said, "Oh, so and so," and the next thing he knew, that was his first contract. So you have to be out there, and you have to be talking about what you can do and why you're good at what you can do, and at the same time not be egotistical about it, because people don't like that either. Hema, so what are your tips?
It's hard to follow you both, because you covered so many. Really, I think your first question, Gail, was really the most important when you're at the point where you're really trying to figure out what are your external and internal motivators. To really, again, take a hard look, make sure that what's important to you is covered. Make sure that you're covered for this year and next year, and really, and 3 years down the line, not just 1 year. But also, and I guess this goes back to knowing yourself, because as you both said, you have to be yourself. You have to have the energy to be the best version of yourself all the time. And you know who your champions are. You really stay close. You appreciate your champions too. You also respect those champions come and they're mutual champions. Don't forget you're championing other people too. It comes from that respect and that trust. Trust comes from my experience really over time and over exposure and having those conversations. So absolutely going back, having coffees, quick touch points, quick catch-ups, providing advice when and making the time and the room to do that for others, and also really appreciating who your mentors are. Who are you learning from? And hopefully that's a mutual situation. So really, in summary, if I had tips, it would be really, I've said it before, but I really can't say it enough. Know yourself, know what's important to you, and make sure that's covered. Make sure wellness. I really, really need physical activity. I need that time. I need to have that to be the best person and to have that energy to be with clients. So I make sure that I have that time somehow in my schedule. Your schedule is different. You're not 9 to 5 anymore. My schedule this week is pretty much all evenings. So how do I adapt my life to that this week? What happens? What falls off and what do I get back? Or how do I adapt? So having that constant adaptability, again, takes energy. And knowing your networks, appreciating your networks, building your networks, and making sure that it's a mutual relationship. And I really enjoy learning. I really enjoy mentoring and being mentored. So really leaning into those relationships.
That's great. Thank you so much. You brought up a lot of really good points. Morgan, what do you have to add?
Good. So I think I'm going to echo a lot of these comments, but maybe also add a little bit of nuance too. So I love the idea of, figure out who you are. So I think that's important. If you're thinking about transitioning, is think about, what kind of job environment do you thrive in or do you want to be in? So, again, I tended to work on a lot of short-term projects with lots of variety, working in different agencies all the time, working on different evaluation topics, using different methodologies. And so a lot of this meant being flexible and adaptive, and that my job environment changed often. It meant I worked a lot from home. And so I didn't have an office space designated within an organization. I didn't have these kinds of long-term colleagues or these opportunities to develop long-term relationships in, the kind of job that you're going to be there for the next 20 years and these are your colleagues and you just develop relationships differently. But all of these things were good for me. They were suitable for me. And so I think that's the word of wisdom is, if these things sound great, then that's really important. If they sound challenging, then I love others' words of wisdoms around how to build your networks and try to find a schedule that works for you and just adapt to the situation to make it make sense for you. I love the comments about make yourself visible, but I would actually say don't let that be a barrier either. So don't wait until you think you've got the perfect CV or the right amount of experience or the perfect website or that you have the perfect social media presence. Word of mouth can go a long way. Word of mouth and networking and looking for contracts and building, a client base can go a long way. So I would say, yes, wait until you're ready, but also don't maybe wait so long that you think you have everything perfectly in order to start. So for me, it took one contract and word of mouth to get going. So that can be totally fine. And then I echo the comments about collaboration. So collaborate with people along the way to apply for projects, to complete projects, other evaluators, other professionals, students, whatever might help you get started or to continue on the trajectory. I also echo the comments about, have conversations with your family, have conversations with your network to make sure it's a good decision. At this point, my family's like, go back to what you're doing. That was great. But it doesn't have to be perfect before you start. There's lots of avenues in.
And so we're running down on time. We're in our last 5 minutes and just thinking about the world today, which is so incredibly chaotic. I wonder if we could just take a little sidestep and say, what's your advice to us all in terms of surviving in this environment? And Hema, I'll start with you.
Ooh, thanks for starting with me on that one, Gal. It's it is an uncertain time. And it's emotionally draining. Even watching the news, starting at that first point of engagement is exhausting. I'm sure we all know someone who's directly or indirectly impacted by the political context that we're living in right now and how it's impacting our economics. My advice would be, again, you lean into what keeps you calm, what keeps you energized, because people are looking to you for that advice and that support so often. Staying informed, allocating a certain amount of your time every day to making sure you're on top of current events, especially right now when they change by the hour, if not by by the day. Um, talk to everyone again, talk to your fellow consultants, try and get on the ground of what's going on, and as much as possible, trying to understand the implications of next week, next year, next decade of what's happening right now, and communicate that. Learning how to communicate that in an effective, calm way, and explain how it impacts your work and the work of your clients moving forward.
Wonderful, wise advice. Thank you so much. Morgan, do you have a comment?
I was going to echo all of that. That is wonderful, wise advice. I know for me, I'm trying to balance the realities of the situation while also recognizing that there's still a need for people to have evaluation. People are still, so, in the last couple of months, I've had more calls for evaluation projects probably than I have in the last year. And so for me, it's that people still have a need to evaluate. They still have a need for projects. They're looking for evaluators. And so I take that as, be aware of the situation, be aware of the precarity of the situation, keep on top of things, but also remember that people are still looking for this work, and don't be afraid of the uncertainty and the precarity of what is happening to deter you from wanting to do this work. So that's where I am right now anyway.
And we may be biased, but we think evaluation is more important than ever.
Yes.
Stephen, I'm going to give you the last word.
Oh my goodness. I echo everything Morgan and Emma has just said. All I can think about is try to shut out the outside noise and be calm within. And then being calm within, then you can be calm outside. And we all need to continue on as we are and adapt to the times. I think that's all I can really offer. I have this meditation map that I listen a meditation app that I listen to every morning as I wake up, and calms me, and I face the day. Sometimes I look at the news, sometimes I don't, and I try not to get too upset about it. But I think both Morgan and Hema are right. There's still need for evaluations. The government's going on. There's going to be consulting work throughout, and you just need to go for it. I always try to take a positive look that we survived other turbulent times and come out the other end better for it, I think, and we'll do so again, hopefully.
Thank you very much. That's just great. I just want to say thank you to the whole panel and how tremendous it has been to work with you on this presentation, and how I wish you all the best. And as you can see, we're right on time. So at this point, I'll turn it back to Vanessa.
Okay, well.